Lesson 20. This is the last lesson in the course of prayer. Dr. Sumrall entitles it, My Personal Prayers Answered. Dr. Sumrall was a mighty man of God. He was a prophet of God. I had the privilege of sitting under his teachings, and he believed in prayer. One of my best friends stayed in the home with he and Mrs. Sumrall, Sister Sumrall. And she said many times she saw him in the living room praying. And she told me this, and I said, he wouldn't be able to do all the things that he did in the world unless he prayed. And he was all over he was in over 100 countries. Can you imagine that? Over 100 countries, and he wrote hundreds and hundreds of books. And he did this. It all began with prayer. Psalm 34:6 reads, This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. Dr. Sumrall writes, this is the most intimate lesson of all. Why? Well, because he was sharing personal things with us about his personal life, his life with the Lord, and his personal family life, and some of his trips. For instance, point number 1, he said, My mother taught me to pray. She prayed simply, easily, and in faith. And I've heard him talk about this. He loved his mother dearly. And one of the things that just impressed him as a child and as a young adult and throughout his life was her prayer life. And that is fabulous, to what a reference for a child to a thing to remember about your parent, your mother, to remember that she was a praying woman, and that how did you learn to pray? Well, his mother taught him to pray. Point number 2, Dr. Sumrall writes, my first real prayers were answered. He prayed, Lord, heal me, and I will preach. And at this point in time, he was about 17 years old, and he was dying. I think it was of tuberculosis. And he said he looked up and he saw a casket to the right, a casket to the left and a Bible to the right. And he just kept looking at both of them. The doctor had already signed the death certificate and said he will not last the day out. Just, fill the date in when he goes. And his mother, he said he could hear his mother praying in the other room. How awesome is that? Could hear his mother praying for him. And here he has this vision. The casket or the Bible? The casket or the Bible? And he's looking at this. And so finally he said, Lord, if you heal me, I'll preach. Or heal me and I will preach. And God healed him, and he got up and he started to eat, and to everyone's amazement, Dr. Lester Sumrall began to preach at a very young age, 17, 18 years old. I remember him telling the story about the first place that he preached. It was in a little church, or was it really a church, or was it a barn? Anyway, it was to some farmers. He said he preached everything he knew and didn't get anybody saved. So we all have had those experiences. At letter B, he says, I prayed for shoes in England and received a pair stuffed with money. Isn't that incredible? Letter C, he says, in California, I prayed to find Howard Carter, and I found him in New Zealand. Dr. Lester Sumrall was a man of faith. If you don't remember anything else about him, as you study his courses, remember that he was a man of faith and a man of prayer. This journey that he took with Howard Carter, he was going through. Howard Carter had gone on ahead of him, and then Dr. Sumrall was he wasn't Dr. Sumrall then. He was very young. He was supposed to find Howard Carter. And so he took the ship, and every place he went, the towns, he was one step behind Howard Carter. So he kept praying, and the Holy Spirit kept leading him. And the Holy Spirit told Dr. Sumrall to go to a specific place. Well, Howard Carter was there, and Howard Carter was leaving, and he went to the pastor of the church. He knew that Dr. Sumrall would go knocking on the church doors looking for him when he got there, and he knew this by the Spirit, okay, by the Holy Spirit. There were no cell phones, no computers, no email, no texting, no Twitter, and no Facebook. And so this man is going across country looking for Howard Carter to hook up with him and travel with him and learn from him, okay? But Howard Carter left. He preached at this church, and he left a message with the pastor at his home. And he said, there's going to be a young man that's going to knock on your door and ask if I'm here or if you've seen me. And he said, I want you to give him this. And his name is Lester Sumrall. Well, of course, Howard Carter went on to his next preaching assignment. And here comes Dr. Sumrall. And he knocks on the church door. He finds out where the pastor lives. He goes to the pastor's house, knocks on the door, and that pastor was floored. He opened the door, but he wasn't any more shocked than young Lester Sumrall was, because he looked at him and he said, "And your name must be Lester Sumrall." And then he shared with him, and of course gave him the information from Howard Carter as to where that they would meet up. So that is a life of faith, folks, on the part of both Howard Carter and Dr. Lester Sumrall. Dr. Sumrall prayed in China to find his way, and a Chinese boy directed him. He prayed for a location for the church in South Bend, Indiana. The lot was $45,000. Dr. Sumrall said he would pay $35,000. He paid $10,000 down and owed $25,000. And he sold 100 feet for $29,000 and had $4,000 left over. Isn't that just like our God? He is awesome. He prayed to God for television stations. And after he signed the papers, I might add, he did a telethon to raise the money. And a gift of $94,000 came as an answer. He also received a gift of $65,000, and a church gave $96,000. Another time he prayed for $10,000, and one person gave $400, and another gave $9,600. And that letter D was for the windows in Channel 40 in Noblesville, Indiana. The man sold him the television station and forgot to tell him that the windows were not paid for. And they were going to remove the windows. But God kept the windows, and that station is standing today still with LaCie Ministries doing the work of the ministry, and a mighty work it is. I will close with that.